You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, this is another episode of Tiffany's Take where I go over your money questions. If you're interested in hearing your question answered on the podcast, please go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer for you. So for this episode, the question is, hey Tiffany, I know you talk a lot about goal setting, but I don't know how to set goals. Where do I start? Now, this is super important because I believe that if you don't have any goals, then it's going to be impossible to know where you are going. Have you ever seen anybody shoot an arrow or shoot a gun and not have a target? So you have to have a target in order to get this stuff done. So that's where goal setting comes into play. Now, for this month, for the month of January, I will be going over a lot of things. This month, actually, theme is goals. So if this is something that you struggle with, please, please, please check out all of my content because I'll be posting stuff on the blog, on the podcast, social media, all about goals this month. So check that out. So to answer your question, to start, first you have to figure out who you are. And I know that sounds very woo-woo and cliche, but it's so true. You have to understand what your values are, what's important to you, where do you want to go, what do you want your money to do. This is all stemming from you. And so one thing that I did on my journey was I got to, okay, let me just preface this by saying I love doing personality tests and all that stuff. So I took as many personality tests as possible in order to get to know myself just a little more, because it's easy to say, oh, well, I just want to be debt free. Okay, but why do you want to be debt free? Is that because that's what society is telling you to do? Or is it something that you really, really want to do? You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to wade through what the societal norms and what people are telling you to do versus what you really, really want. And so I did quite a few personality tests. I did a lot of internal meditation when it comes to myself. And then I figured out, okay, what's important to me? What are my values? So personally, for instance, my values are, family, AKA my kids. They are number one, my first priority. And so when I was started on this journey, they were top of mind. And I was like, I want to be debt free because I want to set a good example for my kids. You get what I'm saying? So one thing that I tell people to do, if you aren't interested in personality tests and all that other woo-woo stuff, then write down what you want to accomplish and then ask yourself why. Ask yourself why at least a good 4 to 5 times. So what does that mean? Let me give you an example. In the example that I just gave, for instance, I want to be debt free. Why do you want to be debt free? Because I want to be a good example for my kids. Why do you want to be a good example for your kids? Because I want to show them what is possible when you do have your money in order. Why do you want to show them what's possible when you have your money in order? Because that wasn't something that was taught to me, and so on and so forth. And so that's how you get to, what's your why and what your purpose is for doing something. Now, once you have that, because it's important to have that baseline, because if not, it's going to be really hard to stick to your goals. I'm just going to be real. Like, oh, I want to be skinny. Okay, but if there's nothing underlying making me want to be skinny, then do you think I'm going to sit there and, diet or exercise or anything like that? No, I'm going to be comfortable with what I am. So anyway, sorry, I digress. So when you're thinking about your goals, you want to make sure that they are specific. Okay. So you want to make sure they're SMART. And I'll probably do a whole nother episode on SMART: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time constraint. So when you're thinking about your goals, once you narrow down what you really are trying to accomplish and you have a strong why behind it, take that goal, your newfound goal, and put numbers behind it. Put something that you can actually track. So for instance, if we go with the same example, I want to be debt free. Then make sure that you say, okay, what does debt free mean? How much is that? When do I want it to be accomplished? So for me, one of my early goals was I want to be debt free by paying off $50,000 in debt by the time I'm 30. Okay. So you see how that was specific, time constraint, and it was attainable, right? So that's kind of what you want to do. Now, that wasn't a perfect example, but that's just to give you some idea of what direction I'm trying to go with this. So hopefully that gets you going on goal setting and where to start. You want to start with what your values are, do some soul searching within yourself, see what's super important to you because it's not going to be the same for everybody. And then use that to start hammering out what those goals actually look like. And I think actually in the next episode of Tiffany's Take, so next Tuesday, I'm going to go over what SMART goals are and then how to really hammer those out. So for this week, just make sure that you have your values together, you know yourself, you know what you're trying to accomplish, and then tune in next week and we'll go over how to make those into actual goals. All right. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully that answers your question. If you are interested in having your question answered on Money Talk with Tiff podcast, please go to www.moneytalkwitht.com/ask Tiffany, and I'll be more than happy to answer for you. We can take questions in the form of text. We can take questions in the form of audio. And if it's audio, I might play it on the podcast. But everything is anonymous, so don't worry about that. All right. Well, you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.